In this video, we're going to be doing everything involved to get this house ready for plaster. We've got a few cool jobs going on. We're going to be building a fireplace wall, building a few curves, and going through and straightening the entire frame. If you have been watching this series of us build this house from start to finish, you'll notice quite a big jump from the last episode. On the last video I did, we were finishing off the frame, and now the frame's done, the roofers have come through, put the roof on, and Hebel's been installed around the outside of the job. For this series though, we're just focusing on everything carpentry related. So we're going to jump inside the house and make a start on the lockup. Alright, so the way that we do our lockups is I'm going to get set up and build everything we need to build. We're going to be building some bulkheads. I'm going to be building a fireplace wall over here. And once we've built everything, then we're going to go through and straighten the walls. While we're doing the straightening in this video, I'm going to show you guys how I straighten the wall, any tips and tricks that I do, and what I think the best method of straightening is. For now though, we are going to get set up. We're going to start with a massive bulkhead behind me. This is going to be the kitchen in this large section, and we're dropping down the ceiling where the kitchen is, which is going to be in line with the steel coming through this way and kicking back into that nib wall. While we build this, I am using Hakoki's brand new framing nail gun. This is a 2nd gen framer, and I want to say thank you to these guys for sponsoring the video, and we will be having a look at this gun later on in the video. 20. Thanks. About there. That's it. So we can see roughly the line of the bulkhead is going to be in line with that steel. So those nogs are going to pick up the top plate. What we're going to do is set up the laser on the ground now. Can I get you to butt your tape into the ply in that point there? I'm going to do the same thing about here. And what I'm going to do is line this laser up with that steel column and then make sure we've got parallel measurements, which means that it'll be parallel with the back of the house too. So what do you have right now?
2773.
I've got 2775. I'll go a tiny bit more.
Got 75 now.
Nice, that's it. What I'll get you to do is cut me a top plate.
Yep.
And we're just going to run it long for now. We'll cut it off later. You go 3.6 meters, please. Sweet. Can you go out?
Yep.
Keep going. Bit more, bit more, bit more, bit more, bit more. Real close. Yeah, right there. Oh, yep. So we've got that line, that's the line of where the ceiling's going to finish. Now we want to set the laser up this way too, and we'll get the line this way. And then we can cut that top plate off, fill the top plate in there, and then we've got the boundary of where we're going to be dropping the ceiling down. Yep. So we'll do the same thing. Yeah, we'll do the exact same thing, parallel measurements. Yeah, this is going hard to the posies, so it's actually going to go up above that little wall there. Yep. Go hard to me. It's going to shoot my side and we'll work it down just in case it's bowed. How does she look? Go out slightly. Yep. Alright, so I've just gone and set the laser up, and the green line is at 3.35 meters right now. We want to drop the ceiling down to 3 meters. The 3.35 meters is a line of where our studs are going to go, and then we're going to do a 35mm plate underneath them. When we built this posi subfloor, we spent a bit of time lasering it, leveling it, and it is roughly level, but I'm just going to go through, measure every single stud by himself. There might be a mil or two difference here and there, and I just want to make this as level as possible. All right, I'm going to shoot mine first. I suppose Alright, so that's one of the perimeter walls done. We're going to do another one returning in, but we're going to build that one slightly different. I'm going to set the laser up, and instead of setting the laser up to that stud height, we're going to go bottom of the top plate, and I'm going to run the studs all the way down this time. What we're going to be doing is running the studs to the bottom and then doing a checkout out of the side of the stud so that the plate on this side isn't going to be flat, but instead it's going to be twisted onto its side. meaning that all of our joists that run through that way can butt into that plate and have a solid fix in. Can I get that level, please?
Do you want me to hold you in?
If I can get this to stick plumb, we should be all good. That's spot on where it is.
Please.
1985, please. I'm going to shoot my Saturn first. So what we're going to do is we'll do a whaler on that side too, and our joist is going to come in and butt into this.
That's right.
That's why I've changed this one around. We're looking pretty good now. So the walls are done. I'm going to reset the laser up now, and then with the laser up, we're just going to go through and do whaling plates all the way around here, and then it's just a matter of filling it in. So we're almost done. Start at the back. 1565. Yep. Up a bit. Sweet. I'll shoot that bit off later.
Yep.
While I'm here though, we're just going to get the joist and fill in this section.
Yep.
So can you cut for me, just do one for now. They should all be the same, but do one at 1510. Can you throw me your tape? We'll go all the way across if you want to measure that.
Yep.
That's quite nice.
Mexico is like literally.
Look how bow this one is. So we're going to do a hanging beam across it, it's all good. It's hard to there. Almost completely done now, but as we can see with the laser line, these do sag down a bit in the middle. So that's what this last stick is for here. We're going to nail it onto the stud, nail it onto the wall over there, and this is going to act as a hanging beam. And John's cutting blocks now, which are going to be connected to this hanging beam we're putting in, and all the joists are going to be shot up to it with a block support in it, so that they're not going to sag down in the middle. Alright, so I have been using Hikoki's framer for this video so far, and they did send this thing out to me to have a look at and to play around with. And building this bulkhead actually turned out to be a great demonstration of some of the key features about this gun. Now the first thing I'm going to talk about is the weight of the gun. This thing is actually at a weight where it's not a struggle to hold above your head and use when you're building something like that bulkhead. I think it's close to 0.5 kilogram lighter than the first generation framer, which I had been using for a while to build stuff like that. So the weight difference is huge. And the second thing that I really noticed with this gun is the teeth at the front. If you've done a lot of framing with battery guns, one thing you definitely would have noticed is how the teeth have never been perfected. And we can see in this gun here, we've got those two bottom teeth coming out as well as the top teeth. Now the reason why that is such a good addition is previously when you wanted to nail something, you'd have to push that front tooth down, meaning that your gun would have to come to the timber either straight ahead or angled down that way. Now since those bottom teeth stick out in this gun, it means I can actually shoot something with my gun angled down this way, which is perfect when I'm holding it up above my head to shoot a posi, a truss, or a bulkhead. I can actually get those bottom teeth in to skew out. Now I do know that the most important thing with this gun is its power. So I'm going to throw some nails in it. We're going to put it on bump fire, and I'm just going to see how quick we can shoot nails with this framer. Alright, so we've gone through, we framed this bulkhead in both units. There's a few extra doorways and walls that we did build, and we did all of that stuff waiting to get the dimensions for the fireplace, which I now have, and it's going to be a bit of an interesting fireplace build that we're building here. I've gone through, set up some junctions here, and this is going to be where the fireplace comes out to. It's going to be 1810 wide, well this is the wall, sorry, for the fireplace. It's going to be 1810 wide, coming out in line with the steel here. So it's just going to look like the wall where this door is continues through and kicks back in. So I'm going to build the frame for this first, and then we're going to have a box out here for the fireplace to go into. What's going to be so unique about this design though, is that this whole wall is actually going to be hovering up about 400 mil. And there's going to be some tiles running in underneath the fireplace, and it's elevated up to give it a bit of a cool feature. It's going to look awesome when it's done, but it just means there's going to be a bit more involved in us, since we've got this huge wall coming out here, holding the weight of the fireplace, and we've got to prop it up to make sure it's not going to sag over time. Oh, you're sweet with it? Just watch the height. Alright, you've got the balance. Sweet.
Yep.
Alright, so the next thing we want to do is frame out the opening for the fireplace. I've got the dimensions here. It's going to be 1315 wide and 625 high. We're also going to have the fireplace 600 mil off the ground, which is going to be right here where my pencil is. So first step, if we go up 600 mil, that's going to be a bottom of the fireplace. And I want to put down a bit of yellow tongue sheet flooring for the fire to sit on. So we're going to go 580. And then I think it's going to be a system of a lintel running through at that height the whole way across, and a few joists running back into that frame, and that's going to be what the fireplace sits on. Shoot one, double check that. Yeah, it's really good. We're going to go 1335 for the opening, but what I want to do is find the center, not of this wall that we're building, but the center of what the finished wall is going to be, which is hooking over there, going all the way into this door jamb here, because this will be square set reveal, meaning that the plaster is going to finish in line with that. Plaster is going to stick over 10 mil that way. So if I do this measurement, minus 10, which is 2165. So if I hook over that wall, half of 2165 will be center, which is 1.82 meters. So we'll hook over 1.82 meters. I'll mark that as a center. And always to double check the measurement, I'm just going to hold it on that center, and 1.82 is about 10 mil off that. 1335 across, half of that is 667. So I go 667.5 in the middle there. Gonna mark that side. Gonna mark 1335 over here. And I'm just gonna double check my measures. We got about 667 to the middle. And that, of course, is gonna be 1335. Sweet. And for this bottom bit here, that is quite loose. So I've cut a few of these blocks for the checkout in them. And that's the exact gap that we need between the two timbers. So you can see that I can push that up. That's going to make the bottom completely straight. So I'm going to shoot these together. So those blocks are going to hold that bottom plate in place. But once we do our extra studs for either side of the fireplace, I'm also going to get some hoop iron, wrap it down the stud around the bottom plate, and that's going to stop from anything opening up over time. So we've got the opening framed up for the fireplace. That bit's pretty straightforward. Now we're gonna have to figure out how to make this float. The more I think about it, the more certain I am that we are gonna extend that return wall all the way down. Even if we do extend that wall all the way down, I'm still going to do a few extra things to try to brace this wall. First one's going to be adding a few diagonal braces like this to help hold it up. That one might actually be a little bit too steep, so I might cut that down. And if I add a few braces like that at the bottom on the sides and then also across the top, that should lock this wall in from dropping down and sagging down. All right, so we've got answers on what we're going to do with this fireplace. The two options we really had was firstly, extend the walls the entire way down. That way they won't get their desired stone finish though. The two options that I thought would look okay is firstly, just extending the side wall down, and then we can have some lintels underneath the fireplace to support it. The other option was to have a bit of a shutter line and have another wall back a few hundred mils about there. And that way you can still have a bit of a feature going underneath the fireplace and you get that shutter line underneath it. Unfortunately, we're not going with any of those options. Well, technically we're going with the first option. We're going to be building the wall the entire way down, but we're also going to be pushing the fireplace another 200 mil back, which essentially means we're taking everything apart and rebuilding it. And then it's going to be 200 mil back, and then we're going to have some feature stone coming through, and that stone's going to be flush with this wall here. So I'll jump on that one now, but the other thing we're going to be doing is changing that corner of the bulkhead, and we're going to be adding a curve to that corner. And that's something I'm looking forward to. All right, so I'm about to build some curved walls. We've got the bulkhead behind me, and I'm going to be changing that corner so it's a nice curved corner. Now, between both units that I'm in, I've got a few of those corners that I need to do, and I was trying to find an efficient way to do it, and I'm experimenting with a little jig and the router to see if this is going to be a quick, efficient way to build curved walls. So what I've done is just got a bit of 90-35, and I've made a perfect slot for the router to sit in like that. The curves we're doing are going to have a radius of 500, so I've worked out exactly where the router's going to be cutting the yellow tongue. I measured back 500 and 410 because that's going to be the size of the plate we need. And all I'm going to do is put a nail into the yellow tongue, and the goal is that we sit the router in there, and this can just spin around and hold that router exactly where we need it to get a perfect circle. It sounds great in theory. Let's try it out though. Alright, so that should sit there, and that's looking good. That should spin around like that. Alright, so that's the first cut done. Now what I'm going to do is we'll pull this nail out, and we're going to cut the other side of the plate. We're going to go into the other hole, and I want to make sure it lines up with where that old nail went. So we'll get that in there, nail that off, and let's do the other side of this plate. Didn't go all the way through, but there we go, it's popped out pretty nice. Might just have to go through, just clean off the edges very slightly. I think this is probably the neatest curve I've made for a curved wall, and that way that we did it takes a little bit longer making the jig to start with, but after spending that 5 minutes on the jig, I reckon this is the quickest and neatest way to build a curved plate. I'm going to put the studs in, and we're just going to go heavy on the studs because the plaster is going to be bending around so much that we want as many fixings as possible so that the plaster can get held in place. If my stud spacing's a bit bigger, your plaster's almost going to go from point to point, which is going to give it a little straight edge there. Having them so close together means it's just going to constantly be rotating, and it's a lot easier to get that natural curve that we're going for. That's loaded up the studs. We've cut all the plates now, so I'm going to get a double plate on top. And the reason we're doing a double plate is firstly so there's more area for them to connect the plaster to, and secondly so that the nails hold better. If we shoot just through the yellow tongue, the nails are only going through that 20 mil. I just like having more meat, more depth in the plates to make sure everything's really held nicely together. Just get one there. Sweet. And we'll just shoot these studs off. Awesome, there's a little curve wall for the bulkhead done. We've gone through, we cut out the corner here at the right size for this. So all I got to do now is walk up the ladder and shoot her on. So she should just fit right into place with both sides, and that looks pretty good there. Taken out a little bit too much there, but everywhere else matches up really well. And what I might do, I'm just going to reset that stud, move it over, and that can hold that together. And I think we're pretty good. So there we go, that bulkhead looks heaps better now with that little curve. And what's going to make it even better is there's going to be a bench directly below the bulkhead. That bench is going to have a curve with the exact same radius lining up perfectly. So you'll see that curve at the top and the bottom flowing through perfectly leading into the hallway. All right, so I'm jumping upstairs and we're going to start straightening the walls, and I'm going to talk you guys through what I do in my process for straightening. A lot of people straighten walls in different processes. The way I do it though is what I think is the most effective and best way to get the walls right. Before we pick up the planer or the packers though, the first thing we're going to do is go around and shoot off our junctions. So we cover this a bit when we're framing the walls, but if you look next to me here, where a wall intersects with another continuous wall, we've got a stud on either side to pick up the plaster on the room behind me, but we've also got these junction blocks in the middle. The purpose for these junction blocks is for us to shoot this other wall into them and hold the wall straight. And what I'm going to do is get my straight edge, chuck it on the stud. We normally use straight studs for junctions, so they're normally pretty good. This one actually has a slight bow. So what I'm doing is I've actually just got my chisel to pull that stud across. I've got it dead straight where it is. And once we get the stud straight, I'm going to grab my gun out and shoot it to those junction blocks. If I turn the gun on. So we can see next to me here as well, I've got a few junctions, and that one is dead straight. The process is going to be just going around all the junctions first, getting them straight and shooting them off. All right, so I've gone through upstairs, we've shot all the junctions off, and now we're going to get involved in straightening the walls. With the walls, we're probably going to be doing one of two things. The first thing is getting the planer and planing back the stud if there's a bow. If we've got the hollow side, we've got a bit of masonite, and we're going to be nailing the masonite on to make the wall straight. So this is an external wall here. The way that I frame it, and it's going to be completely on me if this is wrong, is I frame the external walls so we've got the bows facing in. So what I'm going to do is go through and check every stud, and honestly, if your material is good and your studs are good, you're probably hoping that most of the studs are dead straight and you don't have to do any work on it. I've actually got really lucky with the first wall. All the studs are straight. So the process is I will go through the straight edge, put it on every single one of the studs. And once I've checked every single stud, even if they're perfect like they are in this case, we're then going to flip the straight edge around and check the wall this way. And we're going to see if there's any high points. She's pretty good. You can see if I rock that there, we've got a very small rock on this stud. And honestly, that rock is within a mil. I'd probably leave that. So this time we're just going to quickly go over it. It's going to take 2 seconds. But I'm just going to quickly go over with my planer, do a quick pass by, and we can see that we've got this wall completely straight now. That's an ideal start. That's exactly what we want. Let's jump onto another wall though. For this video, I'm actually hoping to find a wall that has some bowed studs so I can show you guys what we do. Alright, so for this wall, we've definitely got a bow in this stud here. You can see I can rock that straight edge back and forth on it. So as soon as I go through and find a stud like this that has a bow, we're going to hit it straight away with a planer. Now I can rock my straight edge back and forth, and we can kind of find the place that's bowing out the most. And in this case, it looks like it's pivoting around this point here. It also looks like it's about 2 to 3 mil. So I've got my planer set on 1 mil, so I'm going to do a couple passovers to get to that depth. So what I'm going to do to start with is a very short passover where the bow is. And then I want to start fading that out. The next time I'm going to start the planer a bit lower and make sure I finish it in a different spot. If I keep doing that same spot over and over, it means that stud's just going to suddenly kick in where I've started planing it. I want to gradually make the stud straight. So we're going to go a bit lower. And I'm going to do one more. So that's really good. You can see I'm tapping the bottom there. we no longer have a rock in that stud. So I've got a very small bow in this stud too. I'm going to do the same thing. So once we've gone through, straightened every single stud individually, we're going to check them sideways. Checking it sideways can show us that maybe a whole stud is in and out. Even though the stud's straight, we want to make sure all the studs are straight with each other. So I'm going to go sideways, and if there is any imperfections, I'm going to meet it halfway and plane the stud back halfway or pack it out halfway to make sure that it's in the middle of being straight along the wall as well as vertically up and down with the wall. And we can see there's a tiny rock, very small rock a bit higher up on the stud here that we were planing. So I'm going to go through the planer. We're just going to continue this up and take a bit more off it to make sure that that wall's straight sideways. There we go, we can see that's perfect now. So for the most part, we are going to be running around with the planer, taking more off these studs. All the external walls and this massive party wall through here have all been framed so that the bows are facing inward. Firstly, it's a lot easier and quicker to go through and just hit it with the planer rather than getting a bit of masonite, fading the masonite into the stud and nailing it on. On top of that, the masonite is costing about $1 per piece right now. So imagine this entire wall was built with studs with the bows facing outward and all of them needed to be packed out. You're looking at $1 per stud, and there's a good, it looks like 50 studs at least in this wall. All right, so I've got a wall here, and this one has the bows facing the other way. So we've got the hollow sides right now, and yeah, this stud here is quite bowed. We've got about 3 to 4 mil in the middle there. The way I normally do this, and this way works really well for me, is I hold my straight edge against the stud, and I can see where the stud starts to move away from the straight edge, meaning that's where the bow starts. So what I'll do is I'll get my masonite, hold it where the bow starts. It's dangling down at the bottom there, and I'll snap it off where the bow ends and where the straight edge meets the stud again. This time, the actual packer looks like it's a perfect size for what the bow is. So before I nail it on, we do also want to go through the planer, plane the packer to make sure that the packer fades out into the stud. Otherwise, if I put this on the stud like that, it's going to be sticking out too much at the top. The bow is about 3 mil in the middle, but it gradually goes back to nothing. So we want to plane this down from 3 mil to nothing as well. So I've got my planer set on 1 mil, and I'm going to do the same thing we do with the studs. I'm going to do one first, a longer pass by. And then I'm going to do a second pass by with a shorter run. And now that packer gradually does fade out to 1 mil. We're going to spin it around, do the same thing with the bottom as well. And then I'm just going to hold the packer roughly in place where it had to go. We'll get the straight edge once again, and we'll just double check that works well, which we can see that's actually bang on perfect. These on. If we had a bow that was even worse than 3 or 4 mil, what you do is get your first piece on like this, then I get a second piece of masonite, and you have to put another piece on top of that, doubling it up. It's pretty rare to do that though. If you're doing that, your studs are pretty poor. So I'm going through getting a lot of nails into this. I'm getting a soft sheet nail roughly every 200 mil because I want to make sure that that packer is hard to the frame and that over time it's not going to bow up and separate from the frame. The rest of the studs in this wall are pretty good. So we're going to do the same thing. I've packed all the studs out individually, then we'll spin the straight edge around and we'll check all the studs with each other, and I can actually see we do have a bit of a bow in this stud here. Let's do a quick little, we'll just do a few quick pass bys like that, and that looks like it's fixed it. This wall is done now. Perfect. So that's how easy it is to go through straightened walls. I know there's an old-fashioned method which isn't seen too much anymore, where I think it's called crimpling the stud. You'd go through and you'd actually cut the stud if it's really severely bowed, and you'd push the stud out, put a block next to it and shoot it together. Normally, well, I've probably only done this once or twice in my life and decide to never do it again. The reasons for that is firstly, I'm framing the walls here. If I get a stud that is so severely bowed that I'm not going to be able to get it with a few pass bys in the planer, I'm not using that. I'm not putting it in the house. I'm just going to put it to the side, and I'm going to use that stud for noggins or other random blocks we need around the job site. So it makes our life a lot easier when we do frame our own walls. We're very conscious of making sure the bows are the same way, and it's a lot more efficient when I'm going through straightening, knowing that I'm either going to be spending time packing out one wall or spending time planing back one wall. It turns into a nightmare when one stud you're packing out, then the next stud you're planing back and trying to get them straight. These frames have actually been really good. The roof got put on them quite quickly as well, and that definitely helps with the studs remaining straight.